Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. It is exactly 8:27 a.m. Welcome back. News and views right here on Salam Media. Next, we are going to be talking with the son of the late Imam Abdullah Haroon, and that, of course, is Professor Muhammad Haroon. We're going to be looking at the issue around the families reopening, well, the families demands that the reopening of the inquest of the death of their father, the late Imam Haroon, and I think the entire South African Muslim community were behind the Haroon family during this time. I can't even begin to imagine how disturbing, how painful physically it must have been, emotionally, mentally, it must have been for the family to have gone through this past 2 weeks, hearing very graphic details about how their dear father was tortured, let alone for 53 years having to wonder what exactly went wrong, how, what were the conditions of our father's term in jail? How was he treated? Was there any kindness or empathy shown to him? What was the reason for him having been abused to that extent? So all of these questions must have been going through the minds of the family of the late Imam Haroon. Again, I say it, Allah has given the family much strength and courage during this time, because it must have been so very traumatic for them. We're going to be talking with Professor Muhammad Haroon. We're going to hear about the past 2 weeks at the reopening of the inquest. We're going to also hear about the support from family, friends, and the entire Muslim community of South Africa, and then the way forward for the Haroon family. Assalamu alaikum to you, Professor. Welcome to the program. Professor Muhammad Haroon, can you hear me? Assalamu alaikum, welcome. Okay, we seem to have lost that connection. Please give us a minute while we reconnect to Professor Muhammad Haroon, the son of the late Imam Abdullah Haroon, regarding the reopening of the inquest into the death in detention of the late Imam Haroon.
Every refugee who lost their home.
For every community without water.
For every person searching for a way to give, Africa Muslims Agency has been at your service for 35 years, connecting hearts and changing lives. Thank you for helping us to serve the needy since 1987. Support our journey by donating to Africa Muslims Agency as we commemorate 35 years of empowering, educating, and inspiring.
Online schooling? Why not? Kurtuba Online Academy is the leading global online Islamic school from grade R to matric, offering South African caps and international syllabus. And it doesn't stop there. We also offer online madrasa for every grade. For more information, visit www.kurtubaonline.co.za. Kurtuba Online Academy, the leading global online Islamic school.
Did you know that through SANZAF, you can provide a meal to an individual for only 12 Rand? By committing to a monthly contribution, you can assist us in reaching out to more communities and deserving individuals. A once-off donation will also be highly appreciated in helping us achieve our monthly target. For more information, call us on 011 834 6046. SANZAF, changing lives through development and relief.
With so many investment options today, it's only natural that you might feel a little confused which route to take. Should I buy shares or should I invest in gold bullion? Randery Jewelers now brings you the Zahab coin, an alternative to the Kruger Rand. The Zahab coin, a solid wealth protector in its purest form of 24-karat gold, is the safest way to protect your wealth. So don't just sit there and watch your paper money depreciate. Change to gold. Call Randery Jewelers now at 031 202 4701 or visit www.rjcoin.co.za, situated at 151 Essenwood Road, Musgrave, Durban. Randery Jewelers, the family name you can trust. Breaking stereotypes, moving boundaries, joining hands. Salam Media. Humanity sets the agenda.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back at 8:32 a.m. News and views on Salam Media. And inshallah, we will be able to reconnect with Professor Muhammad Haron. Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me?
Walaikum salam. Apologies for the cut.
No worries. We'll blame it on Eskom. What else can I say?
Well, they are making our lives miserable of late. Anyhow,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Welcome. And Professor, how is the family doing now post the 2 weeks of the reopening of the inquest? It must have been very, very traumatic indeed.
Well, I think it remains an emotional journey. It's not easy to deal with for two reasons. One, of course, we were somewhat hesitant to really have gone into this at the outset, partly because we were wondering whether the state system can really bring back justice. But of course, we know there's no such a thing as complete justice, but even partial justice. Secondly, I think when the inquest opened, of course, the reopening of the inquest, and with the judge's opening statement, Judge Daniel Tulari, I think he started on a basis of hope. In other words, he himself, as the judge, would want to get to the bottom of things, so to speak, through the evidence that was going to be presented. We're talking about 2 weeks back now. And so on the 7th of November, I think he sort of started off on that positive note. And as a result of that, I think the expert witnesses helped to sort of add value to his concern, in a sense that they brought evidence that demonstrated in a very tangible way that what the 1970 inquest report had contained were basically all questionable issues. And so in a sense, these experts demonstrated that he was indeed tortured, something that we always knew, but now it's confirmed based upon their insights and understanding and readings of the inquest.
You say that the judge started on almost a basis of hope. Something else that jumped out at me from the response I got from you was partial justice. What do you exactly mean by partial justice?
Well, partial justice.
Sorry, can I just complete this thought? If it does come to the point where the family believes it was partial justice, do you still believe the family would then be able to get closure and move on? I don't think one ever gets closure from something like this. It will remain with you for the rest of your life and the rest of history.
No, indeed. Okay, let me sort of connect the partial justice with the partial closure. I think they basically connected. When we talk about partial justice, in a sense, is that, first of all, truth had been revealed as a result of the experts, witnesses, and their sort of findings. But we also know that these culprits, these murderers, they are no more. They've passed away. But like you and I as Muslims, we have the notion that you might do your dastardly deeds here, but in the year after, you'll be punished for what you had committed. So there's no escape from your deeds, from whatever action you sort of committed. So in their case, they killed my father, and therefore they will have to, in a sense, be punished. So we have that theological hope, and so in terms of real life, we would like them to, if they had been around, to have been taken to court and to have been tried, like the Timor case with Rodriguez. Unfortunately, in Timor case, Rodriguez also passed in the process. So the point which you want to make is that the inquest too is limited in terms of its sort of focus. It's there to basically uh, relook at the previous inquest and bring to bear sort of new evidence, and on that basis, that would be then that would then close the whole process. In other words, they've done their duty and they basically found that the previous inquest is null and void and it should be replaced by the new findings. So, in that way, there is this partial justice that we are of the view that when we talk about, of course, there's no such thing as full justice either, but at least if certain steps can be taken to basically address issues, in other words, inquests should not be limited or restricted based upon previous scholars or lawyers' decisions on what the inquest should be. I think it should become more than that, and not only for us as a family, but for other families as well. The Biko case, the uh, uh, you know the Kalata case, and so forth. So in other words, it should be sort of for all. Coming to closure, I think closure itself, like you rightly said, I mean, we can't get full closure. So we know we won't get full closure, but at least there's some contentment that at least the truth has now come. The books have to be rewritten, whether wherever the story has been recorded, all of these should be rectified. And in that way, I think we can move on. Of course, emotionally, one still deals with it. It's not an easy sort of experience to undergo, but I think the not us as a family only, but our community, our nation needs to sort of deal with these types of sort of issues in a way that at least we can we have now found, or rather been given some sort of understanding of how he was killed. So now at least we can move on and say this is what history should tell us, the next generation, that Imam Harun was killed whilst held incommunicado for 1, 2, or 3 days.
Okay, so now let's look at sadly all the Spijker van Wyk is was very notorious, and we do know that he was directly involved in your dear father's torture. He has subsequently passed on. He wasn't he's not around to have
Mhm.
answered to all of these heinous uh, allegations, and of course the inquest has brought all of this to light.
Mhm.
Has any of his family reached out to the Haroon family? Do you know, are you aware that perhaps any of these ex-apartheid uh, ex-apartheid oppressors, any of their family members, have they followed the trial? Have they attended the inquest? Have they reached out of to the family? Have they perhaps said, "We apologize on behalf of so and so. This should never have happened, and we are sorry that your family lost your father at the most crucial stage in his and your lives as well." And
Mm.
perhaps if Imam Harun had not been killed so brutally and so prematurely, history would have probably been different for your family, for your community, and all of South Africa. Has any one of them ever come forward with a message like that? And how would you have felt had you heard a message of empathy coming from them?
Just just to comment quickly on the issue of history. Yes, indeed, if he had been around, history would have been totally different. And the Imam would also have spoken out against corruption, against state capture, and all of these that we are witnessing, that we are experiencing, our generation. But coming back to these murderers, I mean, I would not even describe them as alleged. They were all murderers, whether it's Bekavon Veik or Majid Khanis. All of them have had a hand in his death, and none of their families we know of. In other words, we've been trying to scratch around, search around online, elsewhere, with the hope that we can sort of find clues as to who their families are. But none of them, and I don't think that they have the guts to even come forward. Partly because they, one can say, they indirectly complicit in terms of what their breadwinners did. In other words, because of krachtdadigheid, so to speak, of the Afrikaner and of the racist mentality that they had, these families also imbibe those values to the extent that they would not even come to apologize, because to them it is lowering themselves. So I doubt whether that would ever happen, unless, of course, there's an individual with, and there's normally the case in some families, who basically do not agree with the larger family as such, and who might want to do so. But I think he or she would also be prevented in doing so. But in terms of reconciling, this is exactly the whole issue of reconciliation. I think if anything like that should happen, we would not sort of turn that away. I think because after all, they are not responsible for the wrongs that their breadwinner did. In this case, Spek van Wyk or Major Ernest, they also just had to accept it. So in that way, I think and I think it's not just for our family. We're thinking of all the other families. In fact, in the Timor case again, Rodriguez was brought to court partly because of her daughter, of his daughter
Yes.
having sort of informed the Timor family of that he was the there. So in other words, I mean there are stories such as these that will probably pop up at some later point. But for now, we have not had that experience.
Okay, so I also understand that your sister Fatima had made a comment on the stand to the point of the families of Spijker van Wyk and others involved in the murder of your father, that their pensions should be withheld. Wouldn't that be a clue as to where these people in fact are? Because if the family are, receiving the pensions, they definitely are around, aren't they?
No, in fact, that is exactly some of our recommendations to the inquest, to Judge Tulare. Of course, he might not be able to effect that. It will have to go to the Minister of Justice, and Minister have to rethink all of these issues with the Ministry of Finance. But I think this is a way of dealing with the past. In other words, you have to efface these people's names from the system, from the writing books, from wherever their names appear. In other words, make them feel ashamed of what they did, and their families need to experience that as well. So you might not necessarily cut off all the pension, but at least the pension that they had acquired were, from our angle, illegally acquired,
Absolutely.
and therefore should be cut. So we talk about money laundering in other instances. We talk about all. This is the type of thing that falls into that category. So why can't we demonstrate that? In other words, if we go to the Holocaust and these Jews were basically killed and murdered at the hands of the Nazis, they've gone to the end of the world to basically find. So why can't we do that? Why are
Absolutely.
we, as Africa, not allowed to even go that route? So, in other words, one just is a bit concerned into the way our democratic sort of government has been handling these particular cases, and one is a bit sort of perturbed at the soft approach. I think there's a need for some sort of hard approach.
Okay, do you think they're just very inept, or because it's the first time they're being faced with these type of cases, reopening of inquests? Because undoubtedly, the perpetrators and the perpetrators, even though they're not around any longer,
Mhm.
they had blood on their hands.
Indeed,
Absolute, they were murderers.
of
So they
course.
had blood on their hands, and the history has to be rewritten. We need to have the correct narratives going out to our children and our children's children. These
Yeah, yeah.
stories have to be told and retold. And we as Muslims, as the Muslim community, need to be proud of the warriors like your dear father in our communities.
Yeah, no, indeed. I think our father did not just die for us as a family; he died for our nation, and in other alongside other liberation movement individuals who were killed in the process. So, in other words, he stands out. But of course, for us as Muslims, his death, he died a martyr. I mean, anyone who basically had to undergo that torture and that type of sort of situation, for us, he becomes a shaheed. Of course, we know
Absolutely.
that there was some shuyukh earlier in who tried to shoot down this idea that he can't be considered shaheed because he died in political prison. and so forth. So, in any case, that aside, but I think the point of the matter is that indeed he died for a larger cause, and that's what he said in his in his letter that he had smuggled out, that he is there for a bigger cause, and he knew that. But what I need to just emphasize too is that he was spiritually geared. He was, before he even landed up in Comunicado, he fasted every Mondays and Tuesdays. He prayed regularly. He, of course, he was a devoted imam to his community, and all of these sort of rituals that we talk about, rituals, the spiritual rituals, really armed him against any such scenario. And of course, when he was taken in, he was basically tortured. Of course, we don't know to. I mean, we didn't witness those, but all the evidence basically indicate that. So he was able to stand up against these barbarous individuals, and also showed us, proved to us that he was not prepared to divulge any names in the networks that he was involved in. So in that way, I think he stands out. Um,
Alhamdulillah.
yeah. So yeah, there was another point that you had highlighted that I didn't sort of respond to. Can you just repeat that one?
Um, well,
We have time.
we both have said so much that I'm not quite sure which point I had raised.
Yeah. Okay.
Going forward, then, I think one or two very important questions also need to be answered. The family did this not, it had nothing to do with monetary reparation at all. It was
Mhm.
about, truth be told, the
Of
history
course.
records being set straight. It was about us as a Muslim community. This is
Mm.
not just a Haroon family story. This
Of course.
is the Muslim struggle in South Africa. Your father was the martyr. Alhamdulillah for that. But this was the struggle of the collective Muslim in South Africa. And I guess wherever Muslims or human beings are suffering, this is that story which needs to be corrected and needs to be told. And obviously, so that's what this is all about. And I do hope and pray, inshallah, that you are going to write a book and you're going to set the facts straight in the book that you and your family go
Yeah.
ahead
Well,
and
we
publish.
have already written something many years ago, but never wanted. But the opportunity now is to just rework some of those the texts that were worked on then into a book form. So yes, a book will appear during 2023, based upon the reopening of the inquest and upon earlier facts that we had already collected, and we hope that that will give some understanding of who he was. Of course, we had the killing of the Imam, a book by Karab Mani and Bani Desai that had been circulating, which is a very factual text, but also a fictitious text for reasons I'm not going to explain now. But I think something that is also useful to read. There's also Imam I, a documentary that my nephew Khalid Shamis basically produced. That's also very insightful. And then on top of it, Al Jazeera also produced their own documentary not too long ago, which I found very interesting, partly because when Khalid wanted to basically do his, they didn't come forward to assist him. But in any case, that's a side issue. The point of the matter is, I think, yes, you're right. We need to write, and I think for me, the Imam belongs to everyone, not to the Harun family. They have no right just to the sole claim everybody who is there for justice, who is there for social change, who is there can claim and draw on Imam Harun. And this is what we would like to convey. He was not a perfect being. He was an imam like any other imam, sheikh like any other sheikh. But I think he had his imperfections. But we need to reflect on his character, on the way he carried himself, and the ideas that he had shared with his jama'ah, with his community during the 1960s.
And don't we all have our imperfections? Otherwise, we wouldn't be here on earth. We'd be amongst all the other angels in heaven. Before I do wrap up very quickly, Shamima Dolly Sali has posted a few comments. She says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, your dad was a martyr. Allah knows best, not those shuyuk. Assalamu alaikum, says Shamima Dolly Sali. The death of Imam Harun affects us all. This is a story that needs to be part of our history books that our children learn from. I couldn't agree with you more, Shamima. And she ends off by saying, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant Imam a high place in Jannah. Ameen, Ameen, Thumma Ameen, inshallah. And in closing, then to you, Professor Muhammad Haroon, judgment is being passed in January, I believe. January, February?
That's right. During January, maybe late January, but somewhere in January, the judge will come back because he is waiting for the report of the our lawyers from Weber Wenzel as well as from the state.
Okay, undoubtedly, you and I are going to have many more very interesting chats post the judgment, inshallah. In the meantime, to your amazing family and the community that were out in full force supporting you in the courtroom over the past 2 weeks, and people like ourselves here at Salam Media, we were with you in spirit. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all du'as, inshallah, and can't wait to talk with you again in January, inshallah. Salams to Fatima and the rest of the family as well.
Wa alaikum salam. Mutashakkur, and thanks to Salam Media for giving us this opportunity. Wassalamu alaikum.
Ameen, Ameen. Walaikum assalam. It is exactly 8:53. That was Professor Muhammad Haroon talking about the reopening of the inquest on the death of, or the murder of Imam Haroon. Still to come on the show, we are going to be talking about the armed robbery at a mosque in downtown Johannesburg. We're also going to be talking with, after, obviously, in the next hour, Dr. Ntsike Lelo Breakfast, a political analyst, regarding the ANC's thinking of selling of assets to the tune of 500 million to pay off their debt. Also on the show, Hanif Hendricks calls for equal pay for women as the 16 days of activism approaches, and we will also be looking at a story regarding tweets being sent out by Carl Niehaus and also Tsepo Khadima regarding the CIA having infiltrated South Africa and very especially the ANC. What does that mean for us here in South Africa? Is it really about destabilizing us as a country and a government? All of that in the next hour. Do stay with us.